President Joe Biden announced today that he is seeking a second term. This is perhaps not surprising, but there was still some hesitancy from some insiders, political insiders, that were unsure whether or not it would for sure happen, given, the age factor that was potentially at play. Now the question turns to who will run against President Joe Biden. Former President Donald Trump is, of course, currently seen as the front runner in the campaign for the Republican nomination. Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is also in the running, as is small businessman Vivek Ramaswamy. Former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson is in the running, as well as some other candidates who perhaps don't necessarily receive a ton of recognition in the press. Joining me now is one of those candidates, a former Rhode Island mayor, Steve Laffey. Thanks so much for making the time. Really appreciate it.
Why? Good to be on with you.
So let's just start out with President Biden and his re-election campaign announcement today that he is going to seek a second term. When looking at what this means for Republicans as they head on into 2024, why do you believe someone like yourself, a former small-town mayor in Rhode Island, is ultimately better poised to lead the Republican movement, so to speak, into 2024 than someone, who is well established in the party, who, Donald Trump, who was the president, Nikki Haley, who was a governor, two very high-level people, it would seem, in the Republican movement?
Yeah, they may be high-level people, but what have they done? I mean, Donald Trump ran up $8 trillion of debt. You're 14 years old. You think that's okay? It ain't okay with me. My background is unique. I'm a Harvard Business School guy, helped run a major financial firm, taught the top financial course at the University of Rhode Island, turned around single-handedly, not a small town, a medium-sized city with 83,000 people, the only city in the 10 years prior to that was about to go bankrupt. We took it to investment-grade bond rating in 3 years. Never been done in America. So my background's financial. I handle financial crises. I know how to fix things like the Federal Reserve. If it's okay to have celebrities keep running, and it's about name recognition, you guys have it, but you young people are never going to get Social Security. You are going to have a life much worse than mine in general. Not you, Wyatt, but you're not going to get the opportunities I got. And that's because of the debt. And as I accurately predicted, when the debt that we borrow, over $20 trillion, there's now no going back. So that's why I'm running. I'm a financial expert, not a business person who just builds homes. Not somebody who just sits at the UN. All good people, but the question for America remains. If you want a celebrity race of the best known people, you've got Biden and Trump. And look what they've done.
So, I guess it turns to, some people have been bringing up the issue of experience. Some people in the 2024 field perhaps have more experience than others. Some have less experience than others. When looking at someone like yourself, for example, versus someone like a Donald Trump is, oftentimes he is, seen as having more experience than other candidates, but he also is, in many respects, people would argue, responsible for things like January 6th, for spreading the big lie, as it's known, relating to the 2020 election. So there's obviously a lot of perspectives on the experience aspect of things. You yourself, I know, have pointed out before that, as you just did, you're not, one of the high name recognition experienced politicians. Why should that be seen as a good thing, you could say, for the average American voter in the Republican field?
Well, it's not a good or a bad thing, Wyatt. My background in education, for example, is unique. I have 6 children. I've personally homeschooled the youngest 3. I have one a year older than you. Guess what he's doing? He's a sophomore in college, full-time college. I know education. I've educated him in Montessori schools. I've dealt with antagonistic school committees. I know what goes on in public schools. I taught at the university level. So experience in what is the question? Listen, and to be very blunt, if these are the questions people are concerned about, we're not fixing America. The real question is, who has a plan to take $61 trillion of unfunded liabilities of Social Security out of the equation and fix it? Only me. Donald Trump says, don't touch it. Speaker McCarthy, don't touch it. Nikki Haley doesn't know what to do. The question for young people, is that okay with you? If it's not, go to stevelaffey.com for complete answers. That's the deal, Wyatt. Not about experience or about who's been in office the longest. We can always get the oldest person, and it looks like we are, who's been around the longest and the best known. Look at our country. It's in tatters. It's in disarray. The middle class has been destroyed. Look at my policies at stevelaffey.com. Look at the Federal Reserve Board and ask yourself, you want Donald Trump and more negative interest rates? Or do you want strong dollar Steve Laffey? I'm the only person who actually knows what to do.
So if you're really looking to enact some of the policies that you are looking to enact, you've mentioned a lot of the financial and economic policies that you are looking to enact, the fact of, the debt that you just alluded to. Would it not be best to, support the candidate that you see best fit to advance some of those policies, to advance that agenda forward? A lot of people are pointing out, the more candidates in the field, the greater of a chance, someone that, perhaps wouldn't enact some of the policies that you're looking for gets elected.
Is the question that I shouldn't step into the arena? Is that really the question? Wyatt, you seem like a very smart young man. But that's not the question.
No, but I'm not
policy. What other policy by what other candidate running is even trying to fix Social Security? Which one's trying to modernize it and strengthen it? Not a one. Not a one. My experience is vast in these areas. I tower over the other candidates when it comes to finance. Nobody disagrees with that. So if your question is, I should go support somebody else, let me know when someone wants to do what has to be done. The problem in America for the last 35 years, Wyatt, is that America and Americans and the elected officials simply refuse to directly confront our problems. That's not my problem. That's what I do. That's what I've always done.
And I'm certainly not, and I don't think a lot of, very many people are suggesting what you just mentioned. I think more people, as many people would suggest in the race, is a good thing for democracy. But I think another concern that specifically Republicans might have is surrounding the idea that, with more candidates in the race, they don't want someone that they perhaps don't approve of. Like someone, let's go back to the financial and economic policies that you were mentioning. There are some candidates, as you've mentioned, you said that Donald Trump didn't do enough for the economic policies and to lower the debt. You said you don't believe Nikki Haley would be able to do that, et cetera, et cetera. So ultimately, I guess you are running, you believe you are the best candidate to do that. How can you, I guess, take support away, though, from those two candidates who have had, vast experience in politics to bring it to your campaign without, allowing someone who doesn't share your positions at all to get into the White House?
Yeah, again, that's not a concern in the American Republic. I hate to put it to you this way. People run, people don't run. My policies, I believe, will have to be enacted one way or another, or the Democrats will raise Social Security taxes by 36% on everybody, and we'll have a massive recession. Or Donald Trump will get back in and he'll want negative interest rates, and you'll have more inflation, because that's where it really came from. So none of this is really a concern to people running. I've decided that I'm by far the best person to be the president of the United States of who's running. By the way, I'm sure there are 10,000 individuals in America who are better candidates than me. They're just not running, Wyatt. Now, here's the thing. You don't judge me by where I am today. I've been out of public office. I've been out of the public eye due to my daughter's stage 4 cancer for the last 8 years. But that's because of my dad. And so I took care of her. My wife did. We did other stuff with the kids. But look at me as a growth star. You don't want to see where I am today, which, by the way, is fine. I've been on many Newsmax. I'm getting a lot of attention. So you want to know where I'm going to be in 6 months. And you're going to want to know where the other people are going to be. I mean, if someone's already announced and dropped 4 percentage points, half of their value in a poll, I'm at something going up. So that's where I'd like to be, because I believe that by December, a lot of people are going to say, wait a second. There's only this one guy that can argue with Donald Trump on issues that Donald Trump can't argue. All the other people are mini Donald Trumps. They work for him. They consider them good friends, right? There isn't one that isn't like this. They all approved of the PPP program, that massive corruption in 2001 and 2020 that they all voted for, the $800 billion boondoggle. Trump signed it. All Republicans running or know about were in favor of it. Not me. I was against it. A radically different position to bring our fiscal house back in order for you, Wyatt.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Steve Laffey, 2024 Republican presidential candidate. Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I love seeing young people at work. Keep going.
Thanks. We continue to follow the story that President Joe Biden announced today that he is seeking re-election in 2024. As we've been talking about throughout the entirety of the program, that was something that was perhaps expected to a certain degree, but there was still a certain level of hesitancy from some insiders politically on whether or not he would do it, given the age factor at play and lots of other issues that are being taken into account. Joining me now to discuss some of the latest, Joe Walsh, former Republican congressman and former presidential candidate. Joe, thanks so much for coming back on.
Always good, my friend Wyatt, to be with you.
Thanks so much. Let's just start out with the fact that he is running again. I believe I saw you posted something in relation to this on Twitter about, the age factor that comes into play. A lot of people, specifically Republicans, even some, further right-leaning Democrats, coming out saying that the age factor, the fact that Joe Biden would be 86 by the end of his second term, is a reason that would kind of disqualify him from being a credible candidate in their view. Where do you fall on that?
Look, is he too old? The voters will decide. I think Joe Biden is old. I wish he were 60. I wish he were 50, but he's not. I supported Joe Biden in 2020. I'll support him again in 2024. Why? Not because Joe Biden excites me, but look, my former political party, the Republican Party, is a direct threat to our democracy. We're living in a weird, interesting time in America. And so a conservative like me will do all I can do to help get Biden reelected.
And so perhaps let's touch on that last point. Do you think there will be very many Republicans such as yourself who might be willing to turn and support President Biden, given the fact that there seems to be a small level of enthusiasm for a Trump-Biden rematch? On the Republican side, a lot of people are still supporting Donald Trump. On the Democratic side, a lot of people are still supporting Joe Biden. But with respect to where all of the people kind of in the middle of that go, do you think many of them will turn to Joe Biden?
Yes. Again, let's not forget, Wyatt, Joe Biden won by only 55,000 votes in 3 states because of our electoral college. It was an extremely close election. What helped push Joe Biden over the top in 2020 was former Republicans like me, conservatives like me, who said, I can't support what the Republican Party has become. And so even though I may not agree with Joe Biden on most issues, and I don't, right now it's all about coming together to try to defend our democracy. I think you'll see that same effect in 2024.
And before we conclude, when you look at someone like Asa Hutchinson, the former Arkansas governor, who's actually expected to make his official announcement tomorrow for president, and I mean, the reason I ask about this is because a lot of people kind of see him as a more down the middle of the road type candidate, as opposed to someone like a Donald Trump or a Nikki Haley or even someone like a Vivek Ramaswamy who's running, for example. Do you think someone like Asa Hutchinson or perhaps another moderate type candidate that might enter the race, is there any degree or to which effect could they potentially swing some Democrats or some centrist voters towards and to come back to the Republican Party? Do you think that's feasibly possible at this point?
No, because Asa Hutchinson, a good man, has no lane in this Republican Party. Look, there's only one lane in this Republican Party, and that's the Trumpy lane. And that's either Donald Trump or right now, Ron DeSantis, who's trying to be as Trumpy as he can be. If you are critical of Trump, there's no room in this Republican Party. If you attack Donald Trump, there's no room for you in this Republican Party. Republican voters want a bully, they want a jerk, they want an authoritarian. That's Trump.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Former GOP Congressman Joe Walsh, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Wyatt.
Of course, President Joe Biden announced through a video posted to social media today that he will seek re-election in 2024 after there was perhaps some hesitancy that that would take place, given that he would be 86 years of age at the conclusion of his second term. Also, Don Lemon getting parting ways with CNN. Joining me now to discuss some of the latest developments on both of those two stories is Democratic strategist Leslie Marshall. Thanks so much for making the time.
Oh, thank you, Wyatt, for inviting me. I'm honored.
Thanks so much. Let's just start out with the news that President Joe Biden is running again in 2024. That is something that, might not be surprising to a lot of people, given that he does have quite a history with his legislative agenda that he was able to kind of advance over the first couple of years into his first term. But there is obviously the factor of age at play. A lot of people pointing out the fact that, again, he would be 86 years of age at the conclusion of his second term. Did the announcement surprise you in any way? And what are you expecting as he hits the campaign trail?
Well, a couple of things. No, I wasn't surprised at all. Nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, but, I guess I feel that nobody runs for president to be president for one term or for 4 years. They want to be president for the full Monty for the 8 years. And I don't think Joe Biden's any exception. With regard to age, his mother lived to like 115. Now I'm exaggerating, but I mean, she lived a very long time. And, I've said it before and I'll say it again. They were just totally different ages. You know what I mean? Like my mom's 83 and you would never know she's 83. And my husband is an orthopedic surgeon and he's had 91-year-olds who play tennis and travel around the world, and then 91-year-olds who are in wheelchairs and are in nursing homes. Joe Biden is the former, you know what I mean? I think he's very healthy. Genetically, he, comes from good stock as far as that. I'm not surprised at the timing. I mean, when he originally announced before he was elected president, the first time before, any reelection like now, this is exactly when, he, said he was, going to enter the race. So I wasn't surprised there wasn't any delay. Also wasn't surprised about Kamala being by his side. He selected her, and again, with the mindset 8 years, not 4 years. And lastly, to your question, which was kind of twofold, when you are president, you have benefits that your opponent doesn't have. I mean, you have a press secretary talking about what you're doing, your accomplishments every single day. You've got the Rose Garden, you've got Air Force One to do international things, and the media covering this. But at the same time, it can be a double-edged sword because, of course, if you do anything wrong, because you're campaigning from the White House while operating the White House and being the commander-in-chief of this nation.
And he's obviously announced, and on the issue of timing, there are two people as of right now, at least people who are well known to a certain degree, who have come out and announced that they will be seeking the Democratic nomination. You have Robert Kennedy Jr. and you have Marianne Williamson. Marianne Williamson, of course, was, perhaps a little bit more well-known amongst Democratic circles, given that she ran in 2020 for president. She's a well-established author, etc. What do you expect to see from their two respective campaigns, given that Joe Biden has already came out and announced his campaign now? And do you think, any other Democrats might come out, or do you think the fact that Joe Biden has announced his bid might hold people back? What do you think on that front?
I think there always could be somebody that comes out. I'm not really worried, as a Democrat about, Williamson or Kennedy becoming the Ralph Nader, that we've seen in the past that has garnered enough votes to put like George Bush in office as, an example, as opposed to Al Gore. I'm not really worried about that. Just when you look at the numbers that Marianne had last time around. They're just not there. I mean, so I don't see anybody knocking Joe Biden off the Democratic nominee platform.
And obviously, former President Trump, given that he was recently indicted by the Manhattan grand jury, a lot of people, when that first happened, were curious about the implications that it could have on his political campaign, on his 2024 campaign. But obviously now we've seen the amount of donors, the amount of donations towards his campaign. Fundraising has really improved drastically since that indictment took place. What do you think as to the aspect of a Joe Biden-Donald Trump rematch in 2024, similar to what took place in 2020? What do you think, not just the outcome, but what would you be expecting on the campaign trail of that nature?
Well, I would normally say much of the same, but it does seem so far that Donald Trump has taken a chill pill and he's dialed it back a little bit. And I think, look, there was a poll that came out today that shows, there's a fair number of Republicans who are like, been there, done that, got the t-shirt, don't want to go back. They want the decorum. Some people want the more moderate, Reagan-esque Republican Party back. But then there are the MAGAs that certainly don't. So what I do think we'll see much of the same. Donald Trump likes to use a certain level of bravado. He likes to make personal attacks. And I don't think it's going to change, all that much. And I do think the outcome will be the same. I think that I do think it's very likely Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee. And I do think that Joe Biden will beat him again. And as a Democrat myself, I would rather a Donald Trump, because I think he's actually an easier candidate for Joe Biden to beat and to win against in a bid for re-election, more so than some of the other names out there. But Donald Trump, I find there as an American, one of the problems that I have is what happens to the process, because it becomes like a circus in a sense when he's in it. We saw that before. That I don't look forward to, because the last time Donald Trump ran, we saw an increase in vitriolic attitudes in this country, more division, more fighting, and it's more stressful. That I don't look forward to, not only in my job, but as an American.
And obviously, Don Lemon and Tucker Carlson were both recently ousted, you could say, from their respective cable news networks. I want to zone in, though, on Don Lemon in particular, someone who, at one point he was a primetime anchor in the evenings. He was fairly seen as someone who, would provide a balanced perspectives. But then there was some questions about that, as, he made a comment about 2024 GOP hopeful Nikki Haley, specifically surrounding her age and, what should be considered in someone's prime years. And then he had an exchange with another GOP hopeful, Vivek Ramaswamy, on air on CNN. Some reports suggesting that could have potentially played a role in him being removed from the airwaves of CNN. What do you think that means as to the future of CNN, of cable news, and for someone like Don Lemon? What are you expecting?
Well, speaking to specifically, as you said, CNN with Don Lemon, I'm not surprised. Look, when Don Lemon was on late at night, I have seen an evolution. And like I said, I'm a liberal Democrat, and I enjoyed him and enjoyed some of his interviews. I did not enjoy what I saw with the two examples that you're giving. With regard to Nikki Haley, I felt it not only was ageism, I thought it was sexism. Because to say just a woman's past her prime, I've heard that as a woman. God, I've had it said about me, whether it's in regard to my hair is too long, the earrings I'm wearing right now, whatever. And I found that to be offensive. And in addition to that, I thought the exchange with Vivek, I was kind of shocked because of a couple of things. One, Vivek is a man of color. I mean, he's an Indian man. And, he is a man of color. So, I'm a white chick, as you can see. But does that mean that I can't have a conversation with an African-American about the issue of race, about the issue of skin color? I can't speak to it, like Don Lemon can as a black man. I'm not a black man. I'm a white woman. I can't speak to it as Vivek. Vivek is a brown man. I am a white woman. But Vivek can certainly speak to race. I was sitting there watching it saying, does Don Lemon not realize this man is brown and a man of color? And I understood what Don Lemon was saying. But it's not just that. He's also, hosting the program. And I also felt it was very uncomfortable for his co-host, Poppy. She was kind of like put in the corner, if you will, and not allowed to engage. I don't know, perhaps because she is a white woman. I can't speak to the decision that CNN made with regard to, was that the best decision? But look, whether it's cable news or non-cable news, these are all companies and everybody cares about their bottom line. They care about ratings. And CNN has had new leadership, and we've seen a lot of changes there. So they may be wanting to move in a different direction. I'm just not sure if they want to go into more news rather than opinion, or whether they felt that was a line that he crossed. We don't know any phone calls behind the scenes from advertisers, which affects the bottom line and that kind of thing.
Okay, Democratic strategist Leslie Marshall, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.